LPG prices saw another hike for the 6th time since June, while gasoline prices are up for the 10th straight week. The country's outstanding debt climbs to a new high of 11.91 trillion pesos. And the research group says the fresh set of borrowings didn't really go to pandemic response. 1 in 4 Filipinos are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. However, experts warn against the waning immunity among fully vaccinated individuals after 6 months. And speaking of vaccines, a needle-free vaccine patch is now being developed by Australian researchers. Focused and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Charles Lejano. While still reeling from the low customer turnout brought about by the pandemic, Carinderia owners are facing another threat to their profit margins. Dale De Vera with the details.
The COVID-19 pandemic is not yet over, but carinderias or small eateries are already facing the brunt of yet another challenge, the increase in prices of liquefied petroleum gas or LPG. Rodrigo, a carinderia owner, says most of his patrons have yet to come back since most of them are still working from home. He's now trying to make a profit by offering promos for his goods like the buy one take one ulam. Rodrigo is hoping to maximize his resources amid high prices of goods and now LPG.
Hindi nga malaman kung ano dapat gawin. Dapat magtaas na rin ng ulam, konti. Kasi mataas namang LPG. Wala naman magagawa, mataas talaga ang LPG. Kailangan talaga i-budget na lang yung paninda.
On Monday, Petron announced an increase in LPG prices by 3.10 per kilogram, while prices of auto LPG are now at 1.73 per kilo. With that, the average price of a 10-kilo LPG tank is now at more than 1,000 pesos. According to the VOE, this is the 6th LPG price increase since June, with a net increase of more than 18 pesos per liter. The agency explains that the increase is due to the dwindling supply of LPG in the Middle East. There are still no plants available to cater to North Asia. Some plants remain on maintenance. This is on top of increasing demand for LPG as the winter approaches. That's why the government is asking the public to conserve their use of LPG.
Medyo mabigat-bigat na po ang presyo ng liquefied petroleum gas. Yun nga, katulad ng palagi nating sinasabi na pinaplano natin ang pagbabiyahe natin para makatipid tayo sa liquid fuels. Ganun din sa liquefied petroleum gas na pagsikapan po natin muna magtipid hanggang patuloy ang pagtaas ng presyo.
Meanwhile, all companies also announced adjustments in diesel and gasoline prices. 1 peso and 15 centavos will be added in the prices of gasoline per liter, while diesel will cut prices per liter by 35 centavos and kerosene by 30 centavos per liter.
Nagkaroon ng parang saliwa na direksyon ang gasoline kumpara sa diesel at saka sa kerosene. Kasi ang gasoline, tumaas ang konsumo o ang demand kasi yung mga liquefied natural gas na power plant or mga industries, dahil tumaas ang presyo ng liquefied natural gas, nag-shift sila sa gasoline fuel. So nagkaroon ng switching.
This week's adjustment is the 10th in gasoline prices. Adding this week's adjustments, total price hike in gasoline since the start of the year is now at 21.95 pesos per liter. Diesel has recorded an 18.10 peso per liter increase year to date, while kerosene saw a total of 16.26 pesos per liter increase over the same period. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we're One News.
An economist assures the public that the country's ballooning debt is normal, especially under a crisis like this pandemic. Recall that the national government debt has climbed to a record high of 11.9 trillion pesos in September. This was an over 27% hike from the 9.3 trillion pesos recorded last year. It also surpasses the government's debt target for 2021 of 11.73 trillion pesos. But for RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort, it's normal for the country's debt to increase during the health crisis, as the government fills up its coffers for pandemic response. He says Filipinos should focus on assessing the country's debt to GDP ratio. That is the percentage of debt to the market value of a country's final goods and services. He says the current 60% level is still within international thresholds and is similar to other countries' debt to GDP ratios.
Globally, yung standard na mas acceptable, yung debt as a percent of GDP. Wala namang mali, nothing entirely wrong when computing per person, pero kung titingnan mo yung mga literature worldwide, total debt as a percent of GDP para talaga malaman relative to the other countries, how is the Philippines faring, di ba? Is it faring better or is it faring worse? Para apples to apples lahat ng bansa.
But for think tank Ibon Foundation, the country's debt climbed to an all-time high not because of its pandemic response, but for the government funding its ambitious infrastructure push, as well as its lockdowns, which the group believes were not well thought of. Executive Director Sunny Africa notes, Filipinos will be the ones paying for the government's supposed recklessness in handling this pandemic. The government will soon lift the ban on open-pit mining, undoing the work of late Secretary Gina Lopez. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us the front seat to the story.
The government is finalizing a draft order that will lift the ban on open-pit mining. This comes just 7 months after President Duterte lifted a 9-year-old moratorium on new mining deals. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources says they're turning to mining now to help boost the economy.
We need to identify sources of revenue so that our economy can recover. One source that we are looking into is the tapping of our mineral resources.
But NGOs such as Alianza Tigil Mina challenged this idea.
If we stretch it to the last 30 years, the economic contributions of mining has been insignificant. Hindi lumalampas sa 1% ng GDP ang ambag ng pagmimina sa ating ekonomiya.
The ban on open mining was enacted in April 2017 by the late former DENR Secretary Gina Lopez. Mining companies have long insisted that open-pit mining is a globally accepted and safe method of extracting minerals. But Alianza Tigil Mina countered this.
What used to be a mountain or at the minimum a hill, which has its own biodiversity of plants, animals, and insects, that is gone already.
At least 2 mines will be reopened. The Tampakan Mine in South Cotabato and the Silangan Mine in Surigao del Norte. Both are known for their copper and gold deposits. Leones says Secretary Roy Cimatu has created an office whose sole purpose is to enforce environmental safeguards.
Now our chambers are beginning to invest on environmental conservation and protection, and they're even assisting the government in really restoring some of our natural resources, our forests. So I think it's different now.
But again, Alianza Tigil Mina questioned this.
We do not believe and we do not trust that the DNR has enough expertise. They do not have enough people and they do not have enough political will.
The draft order allowing open-pit mining once more is awaiting Secretary Cimato's signature. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
Government data shows that 1 in 4 Filipinos have now been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. As of yesterday, the number of fully inoculated Filipinos reached over 27.2 million. That's equivalent to a quarter of the population. This, however, is still a long way from the 90% that health authorities say is needed to achieve herd immunity. Almost 30%, or 31 million Filipinos, have meanwhile received at least their first dose of the vaccine. The government is racing to vaccinate at least 50 million Filipinos by the end of the year. Experts warn that vaccine efficacy may wane 6 months after inoculation. That's why the medical community here and abroad have been pushing for booster shots. But in the case of the Philippines, where a huge chunk of the population has yet to be vaccinated, is this the way to go? Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us the front seat to the story.
They were lucky to be among the first Filipinos to receive the COVID-19 vaccines in March this year. But it's been more than 8 months, and vaccine experts are now warning the immunity of those who got their vaccines early may have already waned. Vaccine expert Dr. Ronjin Solante says more vaccinated people are turning up in hospitals with severe COVID.
Kasi meron na rin tayong mga na-admit ngayon, bakunado sila, but they still develop severe infection.
Numerous studies have shown that the effectiveness of COVID vaccine starts to weaken after 6 months. The first sector to get their vaccines in March include health workers and senior citizens. Solante warns them to be extra cautious.
You have to be quickly compliant with the health protocols. May mga gatherings, paliban mo na yan until such time you get the third dose.
But the Food and Drug Administration says out of the 20.3 million fully vaccinated in September, only 642 breakthrough infections were reported, far below 1%.
Yes, we do have breakthrough infections, but thankfully they are still few compared to what we would statistically expect.
The whole medical community around the world agrees that booster shots are needed now. But for the Philippines, this is a tricky balancing act between those who need their boosters and those who haven't even gotten a single shot. Dr. Lim Quizon said the rollout of the boosters could start sometime this November, but the government is waiting for the official recommendation of the World Health Organization and the approval of the FDA.
Kung ano yung ginamit mo dati, yun din ang pambuboost sa'yo. Okay? Hindi muna tayo mix and match.
As it turns out, vaccine supply is not a big issue in the slowness of vaccine distribution, according to Dr. Lim Quizon. We still have 38 million COVID-19 vaccine in storage and more are still expected to arrive. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
A vaccine expert seconded the call for booster shots. This after some vaccine brands, including Pfizer, Moderna, and Sinovac, have already announced that they're going to have boosters. Speaking to the big story, Philippine Foundation for Vaccination Executive Director Lulu Bravo said that after 6 months, vaccines really have waning immunity. That's why, as someone who received Sinovac shot 7 months ago, Bravo expected that she would be receiving her third dose anytime now. She also said that vaccine equity is a problem in the provinces, while almost 80% of Metro Manila's target population have already been inoculated.
This is what the experts and the government of health officials are really trying to do, to give vaccines to everyone. That is what we call vaccine equity. Unfortunately, pag-distribute yata ang nagpo-problema. And some people really need to be aware. Paano ba natin magbibigyan ng equity?
COVID-19 inoculations may soon be needle-free. Scientists from the University of Queensland have tested a COVID vaccine patch that delivers a pain-free dose and also removes the need for cold chain transport. Let's get details from Bloomberg Quick Take.
Antibody responses produced by this vaccination is able to potently neutralize the virus and a number of variants of concern. A lot of the vaccines being developed currently require super cold storage. One of the great advantages of our patch is that we're able to remove the cold chain. We've been able to stabilize the vaccine on the patch for at least a month at room temperature and a week at 40 degrees. So this makes logistically vaccine rollout a much simpler proposition, removing the cold chain from transport.
And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us later at 9 a.m. as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.